Greetings, my fellow mortals. I am back again with another album review, and we are reviewing the new Celestial Sword album, Nocturnal Divinity. Celestial Sword is a one-man raw black metal and dungeon synth band based in the United States that has been around in 2020. When they formed, they released their debut album, Fallen from the Astral Temple, in around October to November of 2020. I think it came out digitally on October 31st on Halloween 2020, and then it came out on cassette in November. After releasing 3 or 4 splits, they would eventually release their second album, Dawn of the Crimson Moon, in June of 2021. They would go on to release a bunch of more splits in 2021 and release only one split in 2022. Also, during 2022, the band would eventually sign to the label known as Death Prayer Records. And Death Prayer Records would re-release this album on CD and cassette format. And then eventually in 2023, this album, Dawn of the Crimson Moon, would eventually be released on vinyl for the first time ever by Death Prayer Records. And I definitely got me a vinyl copy of this album right here. Also, during that same year, Fallen from the Astral Temple would be released on vinyl for the first time by His Wounds, the label His Wounds. And to nobody's surprise, I also own that as well on vinyl. Around the same time that the first 2 albums were released on vinyl, Celestial Sword announced that he was working on the third Celestial Sword album. And, I thought initially it was going to come out in 2023, but it didn't. But I was patient, and I knew it would get here when it got here. And here we are now with this new album. This is their first album since Dawn of the Crimson Moon in June of 2021, and this album is really, really fucking good. This is their first official full-length album released through Death Prayer Records. The album also has a ton of features on it. The album has guest appearance from artists such as Nightshade, Drugoth, Zophie Siege, and Ancient Iron, who are known black metal and dungeon synth artists, bands, what have you. What I like about this album is that Celestial Sword's vocals are very, very different from the first 2 albums. The first 2 albums, his vocals would be very shrieky to the point where you can't understand it, which is sort of a common thing with raw black metal. But, it still has it, just not as much. The featured artists on the album did a really great job. The dungeon synth instrumentals were done by those features. The riffs on the album are very, very icy cold and vampiric, which is a common theme in Celestial Sword's music. It's raw, vampiric black metal and dungeon synth. And this is icy cold, vampiric, and such. The album also has a lot more atmosphere to it, which is the same thing with the other Celestial Sword albums. It tends to be atmospheric, raw, vampiric black metal with a little bit of black ambient, which is dark ambient with black metal elements and vocals and whatnot. And I would say this album is way more melodic than the first 2 albums. Not so much Dawn of the Crimson Moon, but way more melodic. No, I would say it's way more melodic than the first 2 albums. I would say my favorite tracks are Blood Moon Elegy, Waves of Deafening Soliloquy, Scarlet Moon Enchantment 1 and 2, Amidst the Cold Winds of Despair and Solitude, and Last Dance of the Night God. My highlight track would be Crimson Embrace of the Nightborn Serpent. And to be honest, I don't really have a least favorite track. Every track on this album is really, really good. From the instrumentals to the actual songs. This is a really solid successor to Dawn of the Crimson Moon. Overall, I would rate this album a really solid 9.5 out of 10. This is like my second favorite Celestial Sword album. Here's how I would rank the three Celestial Sword albums. Dawn of the Crimson Moon, 10 out of 10. Nocturnal Divinity, 9.5 out of 10. And Fallen from the Astral, 8.5 out of 10. Not a bad album, but, my least favorite out of all the albums. But still a good album. But that's how I'd rank all three of these Celestial Sword albums. But that's just what I think. Be sure to check out the album on, all platforms. Grab a physical copy. They are out now on CD and vinyl LP format. There's, they're only selling the plain black vinyls on Death Prayer's Bandcamp, but there's a unique color variant on Death Prayer's website. And I think they're now selling, you can order from the website if you're in the US, because last year you couldn't, but I guess this year you can. And yeah, I will be, getting a vinyl copy of this soon, so don't y'all worry, I'll show it off. But yeah, like I said, check out this album, and I will see y'all in the next album review. Till then, my fellow mortals,